It's never a good idea to build your brand on an unstable premise, and I'm afraid Iceberg might just be a little bit guilty of doing exactly that. My most popular top 10 videos were based on scores aggregated by Metacritic.com. When Metacritic themselves became the source of controversy earlier this summer, I feared the worst for my future top 10 lists. However, in my darkest hour, just as I was starting to write a list based on my opinion, the clouds parted and a light shone down upon me. Could it be? Is OpenCritic the new Metacritic? My name's not important, and this is So, a quick summary for those who aren't up to speed. Metacritic has two scores for a game, one aggregated from professional reviews, one from user scores on the website itself. Neither score's been immune to controversy. The Metascore system has had its fair share of criticism over the years, but the latest hot topic has been the user score, particularly in the wake of the review bombing of The Last of Us Part 2 earlier this summer. Users, whether upset about a story decision they didn't like or some other reason, took it upon themselves to give a negative review and score on launch day, resulting in one of the biggest disparities in Metacritic's history, and, for this game at least, effectively undermining the purpose of the site. This inherent flaw in the user score system isn't really Metacritic's fault. It's sort of a side effect of the internet, whereby any publicly accessible review system is open to abuse from people who have an agenda that isn't in the spirit of the platform. And while Metacritic themselves have taken steps that are not as draconian as some would like to make out in order to help nip this review bombing phenomenon in the bud, it's still created some negative buzz around the site that doesn't exactly help guys like me. Anyway, as I alluded to in the intro, I recently discovered the existence of a site very much in the same vein as Metacritic. OpenCritic, possibly named to evoke the open source software scene, launched in 2015 as a more transparent review aggregator. With a revenue based on a mix of crowdfunding and conventional affiliate advertising, OpenCritic has a pleasantly minimalistic website, although the ads are annoying, including an FAQ that goes some way to allaying the fears of those concerned about the kinds of corrupt practices Metacritic has been accused of. OpenCritic offers different metrics by which a game is judged, in order to account for publications who use non-numeric scores, or who don't offer scores at all. Of course, this is all very laudable and in theory could correct some of the flaws present in Metacritic's system, but what does it do to the lists? As something of a litmus test for OpenCritic versus Metacritic, I decided to look at the PS4 all-time top 10. My PS4 list video was one of my earliest projects from the summer of 2019, and as such is a little outdated. Looking at Metacritic today, at the start of September 2020, we see a top 5 of God of War, the remastered version of The Last of Us, Persona 5 Royal Edition, Grand Theft Auto 5, and Red Dead Redemption 2. Switching over to OpenCritic's equivalent list, we see the same titles with marginally different scores and a slightly different sort order. The Last of Us is pushed down one spot with a score of 94, with Persona 5 Royal dropping to 4th with a score of 95, God of War usurping 3rd place also with 95, and GTA 5 and RDR2 in the same relative positions with scores dropping a point to 96 each. Moving to the next 5, we see some interesting differences. Metacritic's entries from 10 through 6 are Journey, Uncharted 4, Metal Gear Solid: The Phantom Pain, Persona 5, and The Last of Us Part 2. OpenCritic's version of the same list features The Last of Us 2 in 10th place with a score of 93, so sorry if you were hoping that OpenCritic would uncover this game as a sham, as it still seems that reviewers in general quite liked it. Journey jumps to 9th place with a score of 93, indie classic Undertale comes in 8th with 94, Super Time Force Ultra is 7th with 94, and Persona 5 6th, also with a score of 94. Now, most interesting to me is Super Time Force Ultra. In the last year of making lists, I haven't come across this title even once. I don't think I've seen it in other people's top 10s. Its Metascore is a decidedly less impressive 82, and the user score is a much more damning 6.6. I'm interested to look more into this title, as its presence on the OpenCritic top 10 is either the case of a hidden gem that's been trampled down under the weight of Metacritic's weighted scoring system, or perfect justification of why that should exist. What's even more interesting than the OpenCritic top 10 by score is their list that simply aggregates whether a game is recommended or not. This is one of the lists formulated to sidestep the problem caused by publications that don't score their reviews. I say interesting because it might be the only top 10 PS4 games list you'll ever see that features Bug Fable's The Everlasting Sapling, which is obviously Sony's MVP. Jokes aside, I think what we might be seeing here is a flaw in the system that OpenCritic might find difficult to address. Of the 31 titles that have earned 100% recommendations across the board, only The Last of Us Remastered carries over from the score list, and while a handful of these titles have been regulars on top 10 lists over the last few years, some just simply don't belong in their company. And this is because there's a difference between asking a reviewer if a game is worth playing and whether it's worthy of consideration as one of the greatest games of all time. Also, think about it. 97% of reviewers recommend Doom Eternal. A recommendation is a simple should I buy yes or no answer, and of 187 reviews, all but 5 of them clearly answered yes. On the other hand, 100% of 17 reviewers recommend buying DJ Max Respect, regardless of whether or not it's a must-own purchase that advances the genre or meets the high expectations of its fanbase, placing it at number 11 on the chart, and Doom Eternal 58th. This is a shame, as it means there still isn't really an answer to the question of how to include non-score based reviews into an aggregate without ignoring them altogether. Going forward then, I am definitely going to make some more videos using OpenCritic scores as my metric, if not least because it offers a fresh perspective on a familiar topic. Whether or not I settle on Metacritic or OpenCritic as my main source remains to be seen. If you enjoyed the video, kindly subscribe, like, and do the usual YouTube things if you feel so inclined, and I'll see you next time.